Thank you so much for having us. And since time is so short, and I invited my wonderful colleague from the support services, I've decided that instead of telling you all about my research, I will just give you a brief overview of what shaped me as an educator and as a researcher, and would like to give enough time to interview Csaba, to have a little extra, or like, a little bit an untraditional presentation. So my name is Zsófia Tószegi. I am a Hungarian-American educator, special ed teacher, and ESOL instructor. ESOL stands for English as a Second Language Teacher. So I come from education after 20 years, and I'm kind of like a late bloomer. I'm 47 with a family of with 4 children, and I just started my doctoral studies a couple of years back. And actually came across with Csaba as a teacher at the International Studies Center, and immediately found him very, amiable, and we had so much to talk about. And it makes sense, because what shaped me and my perspective, let me change the view because now I can't see anything, and I just learned that I can do that some time ago, like that. Good. So what shaped my perspective as an educator, it all started at the Berzsenyi Teacher Training College, which is now Szavária, part of ELTE. I was a teacher trainee in Hungarian and English, Hungarian language, and also as a primary school teacher. And this was the first school here in Pécs where I started my teaching practice. And I taught languages in many businesses, for many businesses and schools. I met my husband at Camp Takwa. I was a horse riding instructor there, and that was my first time in the United States. I studied peace and conflict mediation, so it was really heartwarming for me to hear Ayuri and Yere's presentation on development, international development. I went to Central European University, studied human rights law, worked for Roma Versitas, volunteering to teach English for minority university students. And that was a really eye-opening experience. Worked for the European Roma Rights Center, worked for Amnesty International. That's my human rights past. And then I went to the US, and it was really hard to break into these international human rights organizations. I realized that I'm more like an educator at heart. So I went to teach where nobody wanted to teach. I went to teach at-risk youth at a academic, vocational, and therapeutic middle and high school. And these students had emotional and behavioral disabilities. And it became a more and more diverse group throughout the 7 years I actually worked there. And towards the end, realizing that I'm more of a hands-on and creative person, I ended up being the head teacher of a self-contained Kappa class where most of the students had intellectual disability. And then the last phase of my, American working years, I worked as an ESOL student at an elementary school with kindergarten through 5th grade students who are mostly in Latin American immigrant families, American children. So that was really interesting. And then I came back to Pécs in 2017, mostly, because I was sick and I wanted my children to learn Hungarian better. And I found myself as a Hungarian as a second language support teacher at our school, our local school in a lower income area where they have a bilingual program. That's where my older kids went. And some of these people who also shaped me as an individual, learned me how to differentiate. Extremely international staff at Spring Hill Lake. She's one of my co-teachers from Ghana, Ms. Dua. I loved her so much. And then the students from Spring Hill Lake at an international night with their costumes. So just a little, this was a little introduction. And then the lay social linguist in me, the emic perspective. I'm a mother of 4 bilingual children, and they're all sequential bilinguals. 2 of them are heritage language learners. Odessa and Balázs. They were born in Maryland, and the two older ones were born in Hungary, but at the age of 3 and 1 moved to the United States. And he is my wonderful husband, who is a Johns Hopkins EdD Global EdD doctoral student as well. So it's a busy family. And inclusive education for me started in the global context, right, to maintain one's heritage, language, and culture. And it was really interesting, especially after fighting for cultural and educational rights of Roma in the region. In the US, there's 62 heritage languages. And we just had to do so much. I just never realized how active a parent needs to be to attend and even host homeschooling classes as a teacher, to go and teach folk dances to kids. There was a wonderful Rózsafa dance ensemble, to go to the annual bazaar and volunteer to bake. I also taught at the Washington, DC Hungarian Academy. I still do online. And then, we always attended the Glenaco Folklife Festival and all these arts and crafts and music activities in Hungarian that we volunteered to bring to the fall and spring picnic. And then came the big change, and I brought my kids home thinking that, oh, this is going to be easy peasy. We come home to Hungary. Yeah, we're Hungarian. And then this is where this whole idea of me wanting to become a researcher was born, because I found all these unacceptable practices that would never happen in a very diverse melting pot society. So I recognize the difference, but you would never fail a student in the US as a Latin American student because of language issues. It's just illegal, and you have to put them in the grade where they are. Yet some of these kids faced even 2 grades of automatic retention. So instead of going to 3rd, they went to 1st grade. Some humiliation by teachers when they got their accommodations from the special education office and they got exempt. Why? You don't need exemption. Even some shaming experiences because of this monolingual and national Hungarian national language policy. Some lack of cultural sensitivity, shaming a kid for drawing a pumpkin for Halloween, and kids started joking about it, and it's an inappropriate word in Hungarian, and it was just no awareness of that. Even sexual harassment towards female students that we unfortunately heard of when they took the time to say something, and the teacher was like, come on, hurry up, otherwise I'm going to stand here and get a hard on. So none of this would be, they would not last a day in an American school system, for example. Failing students despite obvious language difficulties instead of supporting them. And then along with that, what was also, I don't know why it's jumping, sorry. What was also shocking for me is that my second born, Levente, for example, will be exempt in Hungarian language for 6 consecutive years. You can learn a foreign language even in 6 years. And the education laws really need to review how Hungarian as a second language can be used as a graduation exam, because that is not possible either if you already spent 2 years here. So this is where kind of my interest in applied linguistics started. And following Aranka Varga's input, process, and outcome, when it comes to higher education, because that's what we're talking about, I tried to rethink this, and I read this, ordered this amazing book, Neuroethics in Higher Education Policy. And I realized that there's so much that needs to be reviewed. It's one thing that we use during the admissions process, some affirmative action, and try to make up for the disadvantages, whether you are a student living with disability or a student from a disadvantaged socioeconomic background. But it's not enough to guard the gate or to even open the doors. It's very important to also put some services and some support and accommodation next to it. And when we look at, higher education, I think all around the world mostly focuses on elite training and schooling, and there's so much less awareness of what it could become. because we could criticize public schools, but public school was an amazing invention because not everybody had access to education. And now we think of higher education as something that's for the privileged, but it should not be. And it was wonderful to hear Clarice and Doug and Hassan's presentation to show us that there is an alternative way of thinking about it. There is a way to think about it in a way that it could become open access, or it could become a program that's supported, and not necessarily this high achievement, Harvard-bound, Rice University, where you can only get in as a national merit scholar or with a really high SAT score. All of these scores are not measuring human potential and not measuring your potential to be successful in learning. They're measuring likelihood of being able to succeed in a Ivy League college. So I was so happy to hear Kata and Agi's reference to the toolkit, the challenge-driven, accessible, research-based mobile European university. I will also copy this in to the chat, because this is an amazing resource, and I'm actually thinking about using this as a checklist to evaluate our university. And also the other one is the UDL, the Calgary University has a very good toolkit as well that I got from Professor Hathazi at our last SciEd conference. It was a Euro conference. And the last phase, I mean, we've done excessive research with one of my colleagues using a method called, now I'm blanking, but I'm gonna think of it. So we did a longitudinal study of International Studies Center students. I don't know why it's giving, and basically they have a Hungarian language hub. And what I would just want to point out, they have a Hungarian preparatory school program and they have an English preparatory school program. And we excessively studied this because we also taught there. And what was kind of the outcome for me is out of 300 Stipendium Hungaricum scholarship, I mean, this is what makes the program inclusive, that the Hungarian state gives scholarship to students mostly from Central Asia and the Middle East to study here at the university. And out of those, about 10%, a little over 10% of them will study Hungarian. But the whole conclusion of the program for me is, as wonderful it is to have a semester or two of immersion and medical preparatory training for students, again, the linguistic diversity should be considered. We have students who need 6 semesters. So we need to build this program under, and it needs to be either an IB program or IB program or a longer preparatory program, because it's not enough to have a semester or 2 preparation. The same thing in order to be an Hungarian independent learner. And it was similar to what Galali talked about, the Finnish education system, how many of those students, migrant students, are immersed in the system, and by the time they go to university, they can pass a Finnish exam, language exam, and there's no trouble for them to study in Finnish. It would be lovely if we had a similar, longer emerging process. And now I would like to stop, because what I really would like to be is inclusive, and really would like you to hear a little bit about the program that I think points a little bit beyond just having something that the law requires, which is that we need to have a disability coordinator like all universities. Our University of Pécs also has support services, and welcome. Csaba Magdali is the head of the support services and our disability coordinator. And I would like him to tell you about this wonderful program and the way, and I should figure out how to change to the other slides. How do you do this? Okay, I'll make this go away. Hopefully nothing crazy pops up, but Csaba's slide. All right. So how many more minutes? Could I have a signal from, because I can't all see you.
Yeah, you can have about 5 to 7 minutes because we want the others to have time, and then to move to the questions.
So Csaba, dear one, can you please tell me what your role as a disability coordinator is, and how many hats are you wearing in this office?
Hi everyone, and thank you for asking me for these questions. And yeah, as already was mentioned, that disability coordinators is a kind of obligatory position in all the university system in Hungary. So it's kind of not unique that there is disability coordinator. Our thing is that our task is to stand beside the students having any kind of disability, which is appear in the university. And how we find them is that we want to always be around or find them earlier before they start the university, because there are some situations when students are preparing for the university, but they don't have enough information about what is coming in front of them at the university.
So as I understand, you do an active community outreach. Do you go to schools?
Yes, we go to schools and we try to reach any kind of forums when we can speak about what is going to happen with them. Yeah.
Thank you. How about advocacy? First of all, actually, what I really wanted to ask is to kind of see clearly, who do you serve and how many students per year average?
Well, we have approximately 300, more or less 300 students per year with special needs. And yeah, well, if you think about who can be that, you know that beside the normally considered disabled students like wheelchair users or people with hearing impairment or visual impairment, you can find students with mental development disorders, or like several learning, attention, or behavioral disorders as well.
So let's specify. In the US, they would call students with IEPs, individual educational plans. So here, the ones who get SNE and BTMN, meaning like even neurodiverse students who have like dyslexia, dysgraphia, can you also help them?
Yes, of course. Only thing that you mentioned them BTMN, they are not considered as disabled, so they don't have any support in the university.
Oh, that's interesting. So some of my pathway students would not be considered unless you have a documented disability by law. Okay, thank you. That was very useful clarification. And how many students use the services, and what did you experience during the COVID? I'm curious.
Well, we have approximately 100 students who use the services, or at least registered to the service. But the ones who generally come in and we give them active support is approximately 40 students. And of course, as every service lost their patients, we lost so much. So whatever we could do is more on online service. Like no one wanted to have any transportation because everybody needed to be at home. But mental support or special need education support or learning to learn training were given in an online way.
Do you have international volunteers and any student mobility for your students?
Well, we encourage our students to take part in international mobilities, but we have a really low amount of them who already had experience. I see Agnes nodding because she was one of our partners to encourage our students to go to abroad. And well, just to make the circumstances of the area more international, we invite international volunteer year by year from the It's a so-called European Voluntary Service earlier, but it's called now
European Solidarity Corps. Yeah.
Thank you to make me
remember. Yeah, that's wonderful. I really like that. And then in terms of accommodations and advocacy, like how you told me how you reach out and how you try to show that there is this program and allies can also show students, but how, when they come to you, how does the consultation happen and the advocacy with teachers? And can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, when there is a problem, they can consult with us about it. It depends on them if they want to solve their own problems or they need some assistance in it. So we can overtalk the situations and what can be done and how to get some permissions, and if they need to, if they want to organize it or manage it by themselves to let the teacher know about it, that they do it. But if they need assistance, then we can help. Even if in hard situations, we can join to their examination just to be there. Most of the time, our role is just to be there and make sure that everything is okay. But even if the teacher needs some support of how to approach the situation in a more proper way, then we can have a consultation on it as well.
Thank you. I was really surprised to see the variety of services you offer, like physiotherapy. I didn't know, I thought it was something that you need to get through health services. So I was very happy to see that. And also mental health.
Yep, these services are kind of extra services. Yeah, I think really few of the university could give like physiotherapy, because it's an expensive service, but we really believe that the situation of our students who take part in it can be better, so their physical condition serves their learning abilities as well.
Thank you. And my very last question, what are your hopes for the future? And while you're telling this, I'm going to show all the wonderful images that show how much fun you have with students. And so it's not just about service, but it's also about taking them out to the community, and to pubs and to festivals and sports days. So I will show the pictures and you can tell them what are things you're hoping for that still is place for development, or some strategy that you are hoping.
Thank you. It is really important for us to make the university more sensible. And going back to Agnes Charlotta's presentation, if you remember the pictures, the first two, second and the third one, I think we in between the first and the second, somewhere in the equality and equity. So we have so much to do to reach the universal design philosophy. We really want to make the university inclusive, and but it's hard to manage. The next step we want to take is that to put to the decision-making process to a kind of horizontal principle to the inclusion and the equal opportunities approaches. So, and also increasing the level of the accessibility, every kind of level of the accessibility. And there is a student or teacher training aim that even these students who have difficulties, especially in studies, could be part of the teacher training.
Yes, that is what I wanted to emphasize too, that there are things that we need to fight for together. And I'm really happy that I just got offered a position to be an assistant lecturer from September on, and I'm probably going to be one of the few with this special education focus. So I just wanted to tell you the good news that I'm going to be on board, and we can fundraise and we could bring students who are the teacher training programs.
You see, we are not on our own, so we have good partners to reach these aims, but still there is lots of to do. And well, I think the whole society of the educators should have a kind of different approach, or there are generations who need to change their point of view in this situation. So
thank you so much. As the image is also showing, our time is up and we would like to have some space for everyone to ask questions. Thank you. Thank you.